Hello and welcome to The Print. This is Fariha Iftikhar, and today we are joined by a very special guest, Professor Michel Danino. Sir is right now a visiting professor at the Humanities and Social Sciences Department at IIT Gandhinagar. Sir is also a member of the committee which drafted the National Curriculum Framework 2023. He is also a chairperson of the committee that is finalizing and drafting the new social sciences textbooks for NCERT. Welcome to The Print, sir. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
So, first of all, we would like to ask you, like you were the member of the NCF 2023. So, what is the major difference between this new NCF and the previous ones, both in terms of like curriculum and pedagogies? If you can just take us around.
So it's a good question because, as you know, there have been many attempts in the past. It's not the first attempt to change school education in India in depth. I remember myself having witnessed the 1986 new education policy, and then there was in 2005 a new curriculum framework, and so on and so forth. So there have been many attempts. And they've achieved partial successes, but by and large, they failed to really change the system. And the almost universal consensus is that the school system got worse and worse in India for a variety of reasons that we don't have to go into now. This attempt, based on the National Education Policy 2020, is very different. The central philosophy, if you like, the core philosophy is not that different from the 1986 new education policy. There are lots of commonalities because the world over, what good school education means is reasonably well understood. But still, there are a lot of structural and important details which make a big difference. For example, as you know, we were in the 10 plus 2 system, so 10 years and then the final 2 years for preparation to the final board exam and so on. This has been changed into a structure called 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. So 5 is the foundational stage, 3 is preparatory, then middle, another 3, and finally 4 years for secondary. Apparently, it may not change much, but since the syllabi are going to be designed accordingly, and the idea is that within a particular stage, the syllabus is adjustable, has some flexibility, but certain competencies, the concept of competency, which was there earlier but now becomes much more central, should be achieved within a certain stage. So therefore, this change, 5 plus 4 plus 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, becomes significant. That is one. Secondly, the philosophy puts much more stress on the multidisciplinarity, the holistic nature, if you like, of education. Streams have been basically abolished. If you read the National Curriculum Framework for School Education 2023, so it was released last year, you will see that there is a lot more flexibility that school students can have, especially in the last years, in choosing certain curricular areas that they would like to study. So they can have science and they can have art at the same time. In fact, they cannot have only science. This is no longer permitted in the new system. So without going into the details of the structural change, they are all in the NCF SE. I just want to stress that this is really important. So there are no more hard separations between the disciplines. In fact, we avoid the term discipline altogether. We try to speak more of curricular area. And this means that when you design a course on science, for example, you have to keep, let's say, social aspects in mind. Try to bring them in. Maybe artistic aspects. When you deal with art, you could bring, of course, social aspects, obviously, but also maybe some aspects of science. Maybe when you deal with music, for example. So there are so many intersections in real life which are not reflected in the old system. And that is a major change that is trying to happen, let us say. Then there is an emphasis on experiential activity-based learning. There have been many, innovative educational systems the world over, emphasizing the fact that, cognitive abilities of the child develop much more with hands-on activities. You cannot start from, especially in the lower classes, teaching abstract concepts. They mean absolutely nothing for the child. So this is to be respected and understood. So therefore, in all the new textbooks, and I hope those who read the textbooks objectively will find this sufficiently reflected, there's much more, emphasis on activity-based, sometimes experiments, reflections, and of course also analytical and critical thinking. And that increases class after class. The idea is that the child should be engaged in the education, should no longer be a passive recipient. The dialogue between the teacher and the child must really be a dialogue, not a monologue, not a one-way traffic. Briefly, there are other features, for example, reducing the syllabus very, very substantially. We've been talking about reduction of 30 to 50% across the board. Everybody agreed that the syllabus was overloaded and unmanageable, actually impossible to assimilate for the average student. But nothing was being done about it. Rather the opposite, it was getting heavier and heavier from year to year. So this is a radical change. And then there are other things like putting the mother tongue or the regional tongue more at the center of education, while at the same time, we can discuss this separately if you like, while at the same time giving space to other languages. So there's no question of imposition of a particular language. And then new disciplines appearing, for example, vocational education, which was such an option in the past, is now mandatory.
So when you mentioned about the regional languages, there is a lot of emphasis in NCF, and in fact, there is a recommendation to introduce one extra language, which should be a regional language in classes 9 to 12th. Would you like to say something about it? Like, what was the rationale behind it?
The rationale, I think, is the double recognition. First of all, recognition that English is a very important international language, and there's no question of abandoning it. Many young Indians score better than in other countries because of their knowledge of English. But at the same time, it should not have the centrality that it has or the prestige that it has, because the majority of English medium schools, and there are surveys after surveys to prove it, are put off, or let us say handicapped, by being compelled to learn in what remains at the end of the day a foreign language. I was educated in school in France. I cannot even picture a French school children being forced to learn in English. It wouldn't never work. So learning English, yes, we did learn English very much. It was mandatory. But we studied in French. Now, of course, the Indian landscape is infinitely more complicated because of the multiplicity of languages and the fact that you cannot, maybe if you are in Bihar and you want to learn Tamil or Malayalam, it may not be possible for logistical reasons, etc. But the philosophy is that there should be more centrality to the Indian languages. And while English remains, and in fact, there are options also for other foreign languages if the school child desires, it should, its centrality, the fact that English is on a pedestal and that people remain obsessed with English medium schools should be eroded gradually. It will not happen in a year or two, naturally. We're talking about maybe, 10 to 20 years for the change to be done, because there's so much of logistical challenge associated with this. You need to develop good textbooks in Indian languages. You need sometimes to develop a vocabulary. There are so
Teachers
many,
as well.
and the teachers have to be prepared, absolutely. In fact, they have to be prepared, and I was going to come to that, to the entire new approach, because the NCFSE puts the centrality of the teacher, puts a lot of emphasis on this. It was there in principle in the past, but now there's a lot more, what shall I say, a lot more. If you read the NCFSE, there's a lot more that addresses the teacher and tells the teacher how the classroom should be ideally conducted in a way that is engaging and creative and so on. So these are some of the radical changes that I hope we'll see more and more implemented.
So when we are talking about, since you just mentioned about introduction of school education in regional languages, there should be a sync with higher education as well. Like more and more higher education institutions should also offer courses in Indian languages, right?
That's true, and that remains a big challenge, undoubtedly. There are experiments happening here and there in India where, for example, engineering courses are tried in regional languages. I'm myself in an IIT where, in theory, the medium is English, but we have students who hardly understand English. And some of the professors end up actually teaching half in English and half in Hindi, for example. Because they have to, they'll teach in Hindi, but sometimes they'll teach in English, but sometimes they have to explain in Hindi. So already this transition has to happen, but it has to happen in a way that again will be very well strategized, and with again good textbooks in Indian languages. And there has to be a transition where perhaps, and this is something which is suggested somewhere in the NEP or the NCFSE, we have sometimes to allow for bilingualism. Jumping from English into a pure Indian language, pure with quotation marks, may not be an easy transition. We're not ready for it. The teachers are not ready for it. The books are
Yes.
not ready for it. But allowing for bilingualism, which may be a bit messy for a while, may be a workable transition, let us say. So again, it's not a question of rejecting English. English will remain even in higher education. There's no debate about this. But increasing the space given to, because again, most of our Indian students at school or at higher education, I would say 80 to 90% of them, they think in their mother tongue. They do not think in English. So you are, almost forcing them into a completely unnatural situation. And we see that, as I said, in my IIT, I've seen it again and again.
Sir, also NCF has a lot of emphasis on the induction of content from Indian knowledge systems. Sir, would you like to tell us about it, like why this recommendation is there? And it's a part of NEP itself, right?
So, as someone who's been recommending for maybe 25 or even 30 years, that not recommending, but rather witnessing the unnatural situation in India, where the Indian content, the content of Indian culture, Indian heritage, Indian texts, Indian philosophies, Indian knowledge systems of all kinds in the educational system is almost nil, both in the school and higher education levels. I am surprised that this recommendation did not come earlier. I think India wasted a lot of time. It would have been much easier to plan this, a few years after independence in a gradual way. There is a wealth of knowledge which all scholars acknowledge, and many of them, both Indian and foreign, with great admiration, a wealth of knowledge in the ancient Indian way of thinking, and also the ancient Indian disciplines. For example, from architecture to governance to medicine to mathematics to, of course, literature, of course, philosophy, spirituality, and so on and so forth. So this is what is called Indian knowledge systems. The NEP does not use the term so much as the term rootedness. So
Yes.
the emphasis is not that Indian school children should become scholars in Indian knowledge systems. That's obviously not possible, not desirable either, but that they should be exposed to those cultural roots that are very enriching, and that are not something that belongs exclusively to the past. More and more, look at the corporate world, look at this academic world, scholarly world, and sometimes popular culture also. There is a desire to rediscover those roots, to understand, for example, Can Arthashastra give us lessons in leadership or management, and so on and so forth? Can ancient Indian traditions of water management help us in managing the water crisis today? So all of these, can Ayurveda, provide, good alternatives, viable alternatives to conventional medicine, and so on and so forth. So in every field almost, you can find some relevance of the ancient knowledge systems. It's not a return to the past, it's rather using the past to enrich the present and sometimes to offer new perspectives, new ways of thinking, new solutions. So therefore, this is something which, if you will allow me to read one, just this morning as I was preparing another talk, I came upon this quotation by the great art critic Ananda Kumaraswamy. From 1910s to 1940s, he wrote many very seminal books, and he's famous in the field of Indian art. And he wrote, he was Sri Lankan by origin, by the way. He wrote, "It is hard to realize," and I think this was written around 1920. So we're talking about a century ago. "It is hard to realize how completely the continuity of Indian life has been severed. A single generation of English education suffices to break the threads of tradition and to create a nondescript and superficial being deprived of all roots, a sort of intellectual pariah who does not belong to the East or the West, the past or the future. The greatest danger for India is the loss of her spiritual integrity. Of all Indian problems, the educational is the most difficult and the most tragic." So you see, nothing is new under the sun. And this is what NEP and NCFSE are trying to tackle. But I would like to add that it has to be done with great care
Yes.
and with intelligent planning, in a way that avoids the common traps of introducing India's cultural heritage, such as exaggeration, such as claims that cannot be, defended, verified, such as also a tendency to glorify the past excessively. We are talking about really extracting the very best of what made Indian civilization admired across the world, and integrating it in a gentle way so that the school children would by themselves become interested in it, and become aware of this great wealth which was not available so far. So I think this is the intention. How far we will succeed, that remains to be seen.
So you're chairing the committee which is now drafting and looking after the textbooks, social science textbooks of NCERT. So, sir, what changes are we expecting in the new textbooks now? And one of it is already in market, right? If I'm not wrong, class six textbook, social science textbook. Can you please tell us, like, what can we expect next?
So we can expect a completely different approach. And I've been very surprised, if you permit, to see a lot of articles in the media after the textbook of grade 6 came out recently. I've been very surprised by a lot of articles saying, "Oh, this chapter was taken out, that chapter was added, this chapter was omitted," that was the common phrase, and so on. It's like comparing a textbook in Germany with a textbook in Japan, perhaps. You don't do that. There's no point comparing the new textbooks with the old, whether in social science or mathematics and so on. The whole approach, the whole foundation is completely different. The syllabus is different. So we're talking about an attempt which is absolutely on a clean slate. So first of all, there are many features in this textbook which try to really implement the philosophy spelled out in the National Curriculum Framework for School Education, more than the NEP, because the NCFSE is really what contains the bolts and nuts of the implementation of the NEP. And first of all, you will see that there is a lot less content, a lot less text, a lot more graphics, a lot more
Illustrations.
visual appeal, because visual cognition is something extremely important for the child, especially in the lower classes. So we are trying to really focus on the core essentials. Core essential is a phrase that appears, I think, somewhere in the NEP, in the sense that you should really give the child what are the critical core developments, core principles, core ideas, and don't insist on details. Don't give too many facts, figures, dates, names. Just give the central idea and a few important illustrations or illustrative, examples, if you like. So this we've tried to do. We've tried also to focus on uh, a lot of activities. You will see constantly, small box items that invite the reflection of the child. Ask questions. Some of the questions do have clear answers. Some need not have clear answers. They are open-ended. And in the textbook plus, as it is called, which is a teacher manual basically, which is currently under preparation, then we are telling the teacher how certain discussions could be conducted, and because we want the teacher to have enough time to conduct those debates in the school with the children and really engage them in those reflections. So this is a very important aspect, and therefore a lot of attention has been given to the design of these, sometimes questions, sometimes exercises, and so on. And basically, a lot of care given to the choice of graphics that, again, can be themselves instruments of teaching. And incidentally, we make it clear at the beginning. This is our advice to the schools, at least, because of course the schools have a lot of freedom and choice at the end of the day. We make it clear that everything is subject to evaluation. Also the
Yes.
side boxes, which in past textbooks were by definition not subject to evaluation. And that was a mistake, because then everybody would skip it. So we consider that the side developments are actually sometimes often more important. So therefore, except for certain technical details here and there, and we have flagged them,
Hmm.
all the rest is subject to evaluation, and therefore one of the central principles of the NCFSE also, which is the insistence of the engagement, as I said, inviting the child to reflect, means also that we have to correspondingly discourage rote learning, this mechanical learning that used to be the bane of school education. So hopefully the textbook will be less prone to rote learning. You can't really learn it by heart. You really have to assimilate the thought content. So this,
Sir,
I
in
hope.
terms of content, if we can if we can get to know like what kind of focus will be there in the new textbook, new social sciences for other
So,
classes as well.
so in social science, if you open the textbook, you will see immediately that there is a major difference. In the past, NCERT used to publish either separately or jointly social science textbook which had geography, history, political science, and economics. We don't have that anymore. We have 5 themes. Well, that to some extent replicate the old disciplines, India and the world, tapestry of the past, cultural traditions, knowledge traditions. Then we have governance and democracy and economics. So you can find some mapping with the old disciplines, but they are far more interconnected, and therefore this is something that immediately creates a different atmosphere in the textbook, and the teacher will have to do a little bit of adaptation work to be able to handle this new approach. So then you will see that in each of them we try to touch again the core content, the core discipline. And we have now, because This year, 2024-25, there were certain logistical delays in producing the textbooks for a variety of reasons that we don't have to go into, but it's a fact that the textbooks reached the schools a little late.
Yes.
NCERT had prepared a 1-month-long bridge course to create a transition from the old system, the children migrating out of class 5 into the new class 6. That was 1 month long, but nevertheless, there was still a bit of delay. So therefore, we have kept the content a little light for this year, with the idea, which remains to be finalized, that next year we'll have a few additional chapters, perhaps one additional chapter in each theme. And again, this will be left, should be left to the schools to organize themselves how they want to integrate this new content, but there'll be some additional content. And basically, in each theme, what we've done, our goal was to really lay the foundation, nothing more. And again, if you see the what would have to be memorized, it's a very, very low content. It's more understanding. If the child understands with the help of the teacher, of course, then there's very, very little to memorize. So this is, I think, the major change that we have aimed at. And we are not saying that we achieve perfection, at the first attempt. It's certainly going to be an ongoing exercise. The syllabi for the next classes are being finalized, so that we can see, how much ground we really wish to cover, which will be much less altogether than what was covered in the past, which was far too heavy. There was far too much material to assimilate, and in almost every discipline, in fact. For this middle stage, which we are now concerned with, that is to say class 6 to 8. And of course, the secondary stage now has to also start. So content reduction, more engagement of the child, reduction in rote learning, invitation to critical thinking, all of these are again, in summary, the features that we are aiming at.
So, NCF has also been criticized by a section of academia, and who consider that it is trying to impose a certain type of ideology or thinking on students through education. So, would like to know your opinion on that, please.
Well, seeing, because, I followed the debates in education, Indian educational system, both school system and higher education. I followed that for decades, in fact, at least 3-4 decades. So I'm quite familiar with those arguments. I would invite those who express this fear or objection to, first of all, read the textbooks objectively. All of them, all the new textbooks. Try to be objective and see whether you can really detect this ideological or political slant in the textbooks. What I can say, as one who was associated with the current grade 6 textbook, is that there was zero political pressure on us. We had a team, and the textbook development team is published in the textbook, and we worked in complete freedom. There were certain interactions, discussions with a lot of people beyond that team, certainly, but at the end of the day, we were free to choose our content. Never once were we told that this has to go in. That never happened. So therefore, political pressure, definitely not. Secondly, as far as ideology is concerned, I think that those voices that you mentioned would have problems with the cultural heritage, knowledge traditions that we have chosen. But if they can detect any flaw in them, they should let us know and give positive suggestions. But then it will be a bit difficult for them to do so before they see the syllabus of the next years to come, because it's only when you see the totality of the syllabus that you can really say that this is wrong or that is missing. I don't personally, I've never felt impelled by any ideology. I'm not a political person at all. And I felt at ease from that point of view in the elaboration of the textbook. And again, Indian civilization has achieved so much across the millennia that to keep this out of the purview of the school children, to me, would be the wrong ideology. So we let the debate continue, but let it be a little bit more objective and not, biased, especially biased in a way that you are not even going to look at the textbook, but just extract one word here, one word there, and then publish an article in the media. That's not the way to go.
And also, so the criticism is not just about the NCF, like the recent changes in the existing textbook also, when the rationalization exercises had happened. So at that time, like some portions were deleted as a part of rationalization exercise. So if
So
you
I
would like,
cannot say anything about this honestly because I was never part of this exercise. And I have never had time to look closely at which chapters were chopped off and whether the principle should be that if you remove a chapter here, it should not have an impact on the next years. It should not create a gap that suddenly the child has to, jump over. So whether this was done in a way that did not disturb I know that there were lots of protests against removal of Darwinian evolution, for example, things like that. But actually, it was still kept there. If you look at the existing textbooks, it was still kept there in the higher grades. The question would be whether the child is sufficiently prepared from the cognitive point of view to assimilate the knowledge in the higher grades. I'm not competent to decide this. I think this would have to be visited again very objectively. And unfortunately, in India, we tend to, go for hype and make a lot of noise instead of looking dispassionately at the issue. So educationists should have met over this. There was a need, undoubtedly, there was a great need during COVID to reduce the content drastically. In fact, there was a need even apart from COVID to reduce the content drastically. As I've said, that's what the NEP says. But more so during COVID, and we know that even now children remain, those who studied in the COVID years remain impacted and have certain challenges in front of them. So there was a great need to reduce. Whether the exercise was done in the best possible way, whether it could have been done better, I'm not really competent to decide, but it had to be done at some point. Yeah.
sir, do we expect some more textbooks to come next year?
Well, yes, in principle, there should be definitely, because now you see textbooks have appeared in all the curricular areas in six. We have mathematics, science, vocational education, art education, the language textbooks in English, I believe Hindi, Sanskrit, Urdu have come out. We have physical education and well-being, which is a very important new curricular area. I mean, new in the dimension that it is now taking. So all of these, having appeared in six, should appear in seven. Otherwise, there would be a return to the past system. That won't do, of course. Similarly, now for secondary stage, some textbooks should start appearing in grade 9. So that, because grade 9 is another transition year. So it's a huge exercise. I think people do not really appreciate how much of a sea change this implies. And I think more people are needed to come in, people with talent, with the real genuine understanding of the change that is being attempted. And well, I can only express optimism that it will happen, but time will tell. But even if it happens at the level of the textbook, let us not forget, and maybe that would be my concluding remark, that textbook is not everything. In India, we are obsessed with textbooks. It's unfortunate. It cannot perhaps be avoided because in many schools in rural India, remote areas of India, textbook unfortunately remains the principal instrument that the teacher and the children have. But it should not be so. In a good system, textbook should be just one of the many tools that are used. So it's to reach that level is going to take years. First of all, it means that all schools across India should be well connected to the internet so that access to other multimedia videos and so on it becomes routine, and this is very, very far from being the case. So there are logistical changes, but the biggest challenge is also in the minds of people, in the minds of teachers, in the minds of school managements, in the mind of parents. That school education is ultimately meant to prepare the child for a good job, and you orient the school education thinking that you want to become a doctor or engineer or this or that. So this is the mindset that has to change. The school education is not meant for that. It's meant to create rich beings with the rich culture, and also an understanding of the challenges that the 21st century is throwing on us. And these challenges are increasing, they are not less. Whether environment, whether social tensions, political clashes, this 21st century is going to be especially challenging the world over. How do we equip children with enough reflective ability to meet those challenges personally, in the community, in the nation? These are the great challenges of education. So this is what we need to keep in mind.
Thank you so much for joining us, sir.